I can do whatever
I
the
can
hell I
do
want.
whatever the hell
I
I
am
want.
the
I am
law.
the law.
The asphalt of Shadow Creek shimmered under a dying amber sun, a town where the silence felt like a held breath. Sergeant Rick Miller sat in his cruiser, a predatory silhouette framed by polished chrome and state-issued authority. On the opposite side of the gravel shoulder sat a 1998 Lincoln Town Car, its paint buffed to a mirror shine, driven by Evelyn Vance. Rick was the law in this zip code, backed by a badge and a pension, while Evelyn was a silver-haired woman of color whose only defense was a soft voice and a pristine driving record. Rick stepped out, his boots crunching the gravel with deliberate, rhythmic arrogance. He didn't see a citizen, he saw a target. He leaned his weight against her driver's side door, looming over her like a thunderstorm. "You're a long way from home, aren't you, Grandma?" Rick sneered, tapping his heavy flashlight against the glass. "That taillight of yours is flickering. In Shadow Creek, we call that a criminal invitation." Evelyn looked up, her hands resting calmly at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel. "I checked my lights before I left the city, officer. They were working perfectly." Rick's laugh was a dry, jagged sound. He ignored her, his eyes drifting to the passenger seat where a thick manila envelope peeked from a modest leather handbag. He didn't need a warrant to smell the opportunity. "Is that cash? Looks like a lot of cash for an old woman who should be home knitting. This smells like drug money to me." "Civil asset forfeiture is a beautiful thing, Evelyn. It means I take this and you never see it again." He leaned in closer, his breath hot against the window. "Don't bother looking for a lawyer. In this town, I'm the judge, the jury, and the one who decides if you ever make it to your next birthday. You people come through here thinking you have rights, but you're nothing but a line item in my retirement fund. You have no future in this town, except the one I give you, which is exactly nothing." Evelyn didn't flinch. Her eyes, sharp and analytical behind her gold-rimmed spectacles, didn't dart in fear. She didn't beg. Instead, she reached for her handbag with a slow, deliberate grace that suggested she had spent a lifetime watching men like him crumble under the weight of their own hubris. "I understand the law very well, Sergeant," she said softly, her voice carrying a weight that didn't match her frail frame. "Perhaps better than you realize. Are you quite sure you want to proceed with this arrest?" Rick snatched the envelope, a sadistic grin spreading across his face. "I'm sure. Step out of the car. You're coming to the station, and you aren't calling anyone." Evelyn stepped out, smoothing her coat with a terrifying composure. As the cuffs clicked shut around her thin wrists, she glanced at the dash camera of the cruiser, a faint, knowing shadow of a smile touching her lips. Rick thought he had caught a stray sheep, unaware he had just walked a wolf into his own cage. The fluorescent lights of the Shadow Creek police station buzzed with a low, predatory hum. Sergeant Rick Miller sat behind his scarred oak desk, tossing the heavy manila envelope from hand to hand. The weight of the $20,000 felt like a victory lap. Across from him, Evelyn Vance sat on a hard plastic chair, her back straight, her hands folded in her lap with a stillness that would have unsettled a more observant man. "You see, Evelyn, the law is a living thing," Rick said, his voice dropping into a conversational, almost friendly tone. He leaned back, his uniform straining against his chest. "Section 12B of the state code, civil asset forfeiture. It's a tool we use to keep the streets clean. If property is suspected of being involved in criminal enterprise, we hold it. We don't even need to charge the person. The money itself is the defendant." Evelyn watched him, her expression unreadable. "And what criminal enterprise does a grandmother's savings represent, Sergeant?" Rick chuckled, the sound devoid of warmth. "That's the beauty of it. You're 72, driving a luxury car with a stack of hundreds in your purse. Most people would call that a drug mule's profile. I don't need to prove you're a dealer. I just need to suspect this cash came from a deal. Once I check it into the evidence locker, it becomes the property of the Shadow Creek Police Department. It buys us new cruisers, new gear, maybe a nice holiday bonus for the boys." He leaned forward, sliding a single sheet of paper across the desk. It was a waiver of ownership. Now I can make this very difficult. I can keep you in a holding cell for 48 hours for investigation. No phone calls, no visitors. Or you sign this paper saying you abandon this property and I let you walk out that door right now. You go home, I keep the change, and we both forget this ever happened. The air in the room felt thick with the stench of systematic theft. This wasn't a mistake. It was a refined process, a legal mugging performed under the shield of a badge. Evelyn glanced at the paper, then back at Rick. She noticed the way he had positioned his body to block the view of the wall clock, and the way the red recording light on the desk's intercom had been toggled off. He was a professional predator. "You've done this many times," she stated. It wasn't a question. Rick's eyes hardened. The mask of polite bureaucracy slipped, revealing the cold malice beneath. "I've done it enough to know that nobody is coming to save you. People like you don't have a voice in places like this. You're just a ghost passing through. So, what's it going to be? Do you want to be a martyr for a stack of paper? Or do you want to sleep in your own bed tonight?" Evelyn reached for the pen, her fingers brushing the paper. She didn't sign. Instead, she looked him dead in the eye, a spark of cold, judicial fire igniting in her gaze. "I think I'd like to see how deep this rabbit hole goes, Sergeant." Rick barked a laugh and stood up, rattling his keys. "Fine, have it your way. If everything's clean, you won't mind a short stop at the station." The heavy iron gate of the booking area groaned, a metallic shriek that echoed through the sterile hallway. To Rick, it was the sound of a cage closing. To Evelyn, it was a familiar cadence, the rhythmic clink of a system she had spent 40 years presiding over. As she walked deeper into the station's bowels, the peeling gray paint and the scent of stale coffee triggered a sharp, cold memory. She wasn't in a small-town precinct. She was back in the hallowed, mahogany-paneled chambers of the Federal District Court. She could almost feel the weight of the black silk robes on her shoulders, the gravity of the gavel in her palm. She remembered the silence that fell over a courtroom when she entered, a silence born of respect for some and absolute terror for others. She recalled the 2012 racketeering trial in Chicago. A precinct captain, much like Rick but more powerful, had stood before her, sweating under the high vaulted ceilings. He had tried to use the same shield of discretionary seizure to mask a decade of extortion. Evelyn had looked down from the bench, her eyes two chips of flint, and dismantled his career with a 30-page opinion that redefined the boundaries of police overreach. They had called her the Iron Gavel, not because she was cruel, but because she was unbreakable. Now that same iron was hidden beneath a floral print blouse and a cardigan. She watched Rick's back as he swaggered toward the processing desk, his shoulders broad with the misplaced confidence of a man who thought he was the highest authority in the room. He didn't realize he was dealing with the architect of the very laws he was currently butchering. "Sit," Rick commanded, pointing to a cold metal bench bolted to the floor. "Empty your pockets, belt, shoelaces, jewelry. Standard procedure for suspected money laundering." Evelyn complied, her movements fluid and devoid of the panicked fumbling Rick expected. She placed her gold-rimmed spectacles on the counter. She felt the sharp sting of injustice. Not for herself, she knew how this story ended, but for the hundreds of others who had sat on this same bench without her knowledge, without her power. People who had lost their rent money, their dignity, and their faith in the flag on the wall because of a man with a badge and a quota. Rick leaned over the counter, his face inches from hers. "You look awfully calm for someone losing 20 grand in their freedom, Evelyn. Most grandmas are crying by now." "I have found, Sergeant, that the loudest person in the room is often the most vulnerable," she replied softly. Her voice lacked the tremor of the elderly. It held the resonance of a final judgment. Rick snorted, dismissing her words as senile rambling. He slammed the heavy steel door of the intake room, the bolt sliding into place with a definitive thud. He walked away, whistling a tuneless melody, leaving her in the dim light of the holding cell. Evelyn sat down, smoothed her skirt, and closed her eyes. She wasn't a prisoner, she was a witness. The wolf had invited the judge into the den, and for the first time in his career, Rick Miller was the one on trial. The holding room was an icebox of concrete and fluorescent hum. Rick entered, tossing a thick stack of paperwork onto the metal table. He didn't look at Evelyn. He looked through her, his movements sharp with the adrenaline of a successful heist. Evelyn allowed her shoulders to slump, her chin trembling just enough to catch the light. When she spoke, her voice was a fragile thread. "Officer, please, that money, it was for the church, my father's congregation. They're counting on me." Rick pulled out a chair, the legs screeching against the floor like a dying animal. He sat, leaning in until his shadow swallowed her. "Church money? That's a creative one, Evelyn. But the law doesn't care about intentions. It cares about probable cause. And right now, I have 20,000 reasons to believe you're a courier for the Southside syndicates." "I have receipts," she whispered, her hands shaking as she reached for her small handbag. "In my phone. I have emails from the bishop." Rick's hand shot out, snatching her smartphone before she could touch it. "Evidence. This goes in the locker for digital forensics. Could take weeks, maybe months to clear the encryption." He dropped the device into a plastic bag and sealed it with a sickening snap. Evelyn gasped, her hand fluttering to her chest. "My phone and my purse. Officer, my medication is in there. I have a heart condition. I need my beta blockers every 6 hours. Please, it's been 5 already." Rick didn't blink. He leaned back, crossing his arms over his badge. "Standard safety protocol, ma'am. We can't have detainees ingesting unverified substances. If you start feeling symptomatic, we'll call a county nurse. But until then, you're just a suspect trying to manipulate a peace officer." He slid a document toward her, a voluntary relinquishment form. "Sign this. You admit the funds are of unknown origin, and you waive your right to a hearing. Do that, and I'll personally drive you to the nearest pharmacy to get a fresh prescription. I'll even let you keep the Lincoln. If you don't, you stay here. No phone, no pills. Just you and the 4 walls until the circuit judge does his rounds next Tuesday." It was a masterclass in legalized extortion. By framing the theft as a safety procedure and the deprivation of medicine as a protocol, Rick had built a fortress of plausible deniability. He was betting on her frailty, counting on the fact that an old woman would value her next breath more than a stack of cash. Evelyn looked at the pen, her breath hitching in a way that looked like genuine panic. Inside, she was cataloging every violation, every coercive syllable. You're asking me to give up everything just to breathe?" "I'm asking you to be smart," Rick said, his voice a low, oily purr. "The system is a big, heavy machine, Evelyn. Don't get caught in the gears. Just sign, and the pain goes away." Evelyn reached for the pen, her fingers fumbling, playing the part of a broken woman. She looked at the blank line on the form, then up at the camera in the corner, the one Rick had conveniently tilted toward the ceiling. She was trapped in his world now, a world where the law was a weapon and the helpless were prey. The interrogation room felt like a tomb, the air stagnant and tasting of ozone. Rick sat under the single buzzing light, his pen scratching across a carbon copy form with a rhythmic, violent efficiency. He wasn't writing the truth, he was weaving a shroud. On the paper, Evelyn's calm compliance became erratic behavior, and her life savings became unclaimed currency seized in a high-risk narcotics corridor. "You're making this harder than it needs to be, Evelyn," Rick muttered, his eyes fixed on the lines he was blurring. "I'm trying to help you. In my report, I can say you cooperated. I can say you were just a victim of circumstance. But I need that signature." Evelyn leaned forward, a dry, racking cough tearing from her chest. It was a hollow sound that echoed off the cinder block walls. She clutched the edge of the metal table, her knuckles white and translucent like parchment. "I told you, I need my pills. My chest, it feels like a vice. Rick didn't look up. He adjusted the brim of his hat, his face cast in shadow. Anxiety is a powerful thing. It'll pass once you're back in that nice Lincoln of yours. Just sign the waiver. Sign this, go home, and live. It's a small price for your health, don't you think? He slid the second page toward her, a confession of guilt disguised as a voluntary statement. The document was a labyrinth of fine print designed to strip away her Fourth Amendment protections. Rick knew the math. An elderly woman, isolated, deprived of medication, and facing a badge would eventually break. He had seen it a dozen times. The system didn't use whips or chains anymore. It used paperwork and the slow, agonizing squeeze of time. Evelyn's cough intensified, her breath coming in shallow, desperate hitches. She looked at the clock on the wall. The second hand seemed to be moving in slow motion, mocking her. You are violating every protocol in the manual, Sergeant. There are standards. Standards are for the city, ma'am, Rick whispered, finally meeting her eyes. His gaze was devoid of humanity, filled only with the cold calculation of a man who viewed the law as a personal ATM. Out here, the manual is whatever I say it is. Nobody is recording this. No one is listening. You're 72 years old. Who is the judge going to believe? The decorated officer with 15 years on the force, or the confused, out-of-town woman who couldn't even remember to take her heart medicine? The injustice of it was a physical weight in the room, more suffocating than the heat. It wasn't just Rick's cruelty. It was the realization that the entire structure of the station, the silence of the officers in the hall, the deactivated cameras, the pre-printed forms, was built to protect the predator and erase the prey. Evelyn's hand reached for the pen, her fingers trembling violently. She looked like a woman on the verge of collapse, her eyes glazing over as she stared at the signature line. Rick leaned in, a predatory smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. He was seconds away from the easiest $20,000 of his career. That's it, he urged, his voice a soft, poisonous lure. Just a few scribbles, and you can breathe again. The door to the interrogation room creaked open, admitting a sliver of light and a young officer who looked like he still had the starch of the academy in his collar. Rookie Trent stood in the doorway, a tray of lukewarm water in his hand, his eyes darting between his superior and the slumped figure of Evelyn Vance. Sergeant, Trent whispered, his voice cracking, I heard the coughing from the desk. She sounds bad. Maybe we should call the paramedics just to be safe? Her vitals looked shaky during intake. Rick didn't even turn around. He kept his eyes locked on Evelyn, his hands still hovering near the signature line. She's fine, Trent. It's a performance. They all do it when they realize the free ride is over. Go back to the front and finish the inventory on the Lincoln. Trent stepped further into the room, his boots making a hesitant scuffing sound. He looked at Evelyn, whose face was now a pale, waxy gray. Her breath was a labored wheeze that seemed to rattle the very bones of her chest. Sir, look at her. She's not faking that. If she has a medical emergency on our watch, the liability alone... Rick spun around, his chair screeching. He stood up, using every inch of his height to dwarf the younger man. Liability? You want to talk to me about liability? I've been running this precinct since you were in middle school. You think the chief wants a paper trail for a narcotics suspect? You think the town council wants to pay for an ambulance ride for someone who's practically confessed to money laundering? Trent flinched, his grip tightening on the tray. But the policy manual says, the manual is a suggestion, kid. Results are the requirement, Rick snapped, his voice a low, dangerous snarl. Now put the water down and get out, unless you want your first performance review to mention insubordination and failure to support senior officers. You want to be a hero? Go find a cat in a tree. Here, we do the work that keeps the lights on. Evelyn looked up, her eyes meeting Trent's for a fleeting second. In that look, there was no plea for mercy, only a profound, searing observation. She saw the conflict in his face, the battle between the man he wanted to be and the uniform he was terrified of losing. Trent set the water on the edge of the table, his hand trembling. He lingered for a heartbeat, his gaze falling on the waiver form. He knew what it was. Every man in the building knew what it was. He looked at Rick, then back at the dying woman, and for a moment the silence in the room was a heavy, suffocating thing. "Out, now," Rick commanded. Trent swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. He lowered his head, avoided Evelyn's eyes, and retreated into the hallway. The heavy door thudded shut, the sound of a conscience being locked away. Rick turned back to Evelyn, his smile returning like a predator sensing the end of the hunt. "See that? Nobody's coming to help, Evelyn. Not even the boy with the water. Now sign the paper before your heart decides for you." The air in the room seemed to vanish, replaced by a crushing pressure that Evelyn no longer had to simulate. The stress of the interrogation, the stifling heat, and the genuine lack of her medication had finally converged. A jagged bolt of pain seared through her chest, radiating down her left arm like liquid fire. Her vision blurred, the edges of the room fraying into darkness as her breath became a ragged, desperate clawing for oxygen. Evelyn slumped forward, her forehead hitting the metal table with a hollow thud. Her spectacles slid off her nose, clattering to the floor. Rick didn't move at first. He stood over her, his eyes narrowed in suspicion. "Nice touch, Evelyn. The head on the table bit is a classic. But I'm not calling the EMTs until that ink is dry. You're not leaving here without giving the department its due." A low, guttural moan escaped Evelyn's lips. Her fingers twitched, scratching feebly at the gray surface of the table. Her skin had turned a terrifying shade of ash, and a cold, clammy sweat broke across her brow. This wasn't a performance, it was a systemic failure of a human heart. Rick's arrogance flickered. He leaned down, grabbing her shoulder and shaking her. "Hey, wake up! Don't you dare die in my room." He looked at the door, then back at the waiver. Panic, cold and sharp, began to override his greed. But it wasn't the panic of a savior. It was the panic of a thief about to lose his haul. If she died now, the money would be tied up in a coroner's investigation. The paper trail would become a noose. "Trent!" Rick barked toward the door, then stopped himself. No. If the rookie saw her like this, he'd call it in. Rick looked at the pen, then at Evelyn's limp right hand. "I'm not losing this," Rick hissed. He grabbed her wrist, his grip bruising her thin skin. He fumbled for an ink pad in his desk drawer, his movements frantic and clumsy. He wasn't reaching for her pulse. He was reaching for her thumb. With a brutal tug, he dragged her hand toward the ink. Evelyn's head rolled to the side, her eyes half open and glazed, staring at nothing. She was slipping away, her heart skipping beats like a failing engine. Rick pressed her thumb into the black ink and then slammed it down onto the signature line of the waiver. He held it there, forcing the print to take, his own breath coming in ragged bursts. "There," he panted, staring at the black smudge that now legally cleansed the $20,000. "Now you can have your heart attack." He stood back, the paper clutched in his hand like a trophy, while Evelyn lay motionless on the floor. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the hum of the fluorescent light. For the first time in her long, storied life, the iron gavel was silent, and the man who had broken her stood triumphant over her body, convinced that a piece of paper was more powerful than a life. The tile floor was a brutal, unforgiving cold against Evelyn's cheek. As her consciousness frayed, the gray linoleum transformed into the polished marble of her old courtroom. The shadows of the interrogation room stretched into the high, vaulted ceilings of her past, where she had sat atop the bench, a sentinel for the Constitution. In the haze of pain, she didn't see Rick. She saw the faces of 1,000 men just like him. She saw the corporate executives who had poisoned water tables for a quarterly bonus. She saw the politicians who had redrawn district lines to erase black voices. She saw the federal agents who had lied under oath to protect a botched raid. They all shared that same look Rick wore, that terrifying, dull-eyed certainty that they were untouchable because they held the pen that wrote the report. Rick wasn't a singular monster. He was the inevitable harvest of a garden tended by indifference. He was the product of a system that had traded protect and serve for seize and profit. Evelyn felt a tear track through the black ink on her face, but it wasn't born of fear. It was a cold, crystalline grief for the Republic. She thought of the young men she had sentenced, the ones who didn't have her pedigree or her knowledge of the law. How many of them had died on floors just like this, their pleas for air dismissed as theatrics? How many families had been broken because a man in a polyester uniform needed to hit a revenue target for a new precinct gym? The injustice didn't feel hot or angry anymore. It felt like ice. It was a clarity that cut through the agonizing squeeze in her chest. If she died here, Rick would simply file the paperwork, buy his cruisers, and wait for the next Lincoln to drive into his trap. The machine would keep grinding, fueled by the blood of the invisible. Rick kicked the leg of the table, the vibration rattling her skull. "Trent! Get in here!" he shouted, his voice muffled as if through water. "The old lady fainted. Let's get her out of here before the night shift arrives. Dump her at the Greyhound station. If she wakes up, tell her she's lucky I didn't charge her with resisting." Evelyn's fingers curled slightly, scratching against the grit of the floor. She wasn't ready to become a ghost in his machine. She had spent a lifetime holding the gavel, and she wouldn't let it fall for the last time in a room that smelled of stale cigarettes and corruption. The pain was a roar in her ears, but beneath it, the iron remained. Rick grabbed her under the arms, dragging her limp body toward the door like a sack of unwanted evidence. Her head lolled back, her eyes catching the flickering light of the hallway. She wasn't dying, she was descending. And when she came back, she wouldn't be coming back as a victim. Rick gripped Evelyn's shoulders, his fingers digging into the fabric of her cardigan as he hauled her toward the rear exit. Her heels dragged across the linoleum, a hollow, scraping sound that seemed to scream in the silence of the corridor. Trent stood by the back door, his face ashen, his hands hovering uselessly at his sides. "Open the door, Trent, now!" Rick barked, his face flushed with the exertion of moving her dead weight. "We're putting her in the back of your unit. Take her to the Greyhound station on the edge of town. Leave her on the bench. If anyone asks, she was disoriented, and we gave her a courtesy lift." Trent stared at Evelyn's face. Her spectacles were gone, and a smear of black fingerprint ink tracked across her cheek like a bruise. Her breathing was a wet, shallow rattle. "Sergeant, she's blue. Her lips are blue. We can't just leave her at a bus stop in the middle of the night. It's 40 degrees out there. She won't make it until morning." "That's not our problem anymore," Rick snapped, his eyes wild with a desperate, greedy heat. He patted the pocket where he had tucked the signed waiver. "The paperwork is done. The money is ours. If she dies at a bus stop, she's a vagrant with a bad heart. If she dies in here, we're a headline. Now move." Trent reached for the door handle, his movements mechanical, his soul fracturing under the weight of the badge. But as he leaned down to grab her feet, Evelyn's eyes fluttered open. She didn't look at Rick. She looked straight at Trent. There was no fear in her gaze. There was no desperate plea for her life, no weeping for mercy. Instead, her eyes held a terrifying, lucid clarity. It was the look of a teacher watching a student fail a moral test. It was a silent, piercing judgment that stripped away his uniform and his excuses, leaving him naked in his own cowardice. In that look, she wasn't a victim. She was a mirror. She was showing him exactly what he was becoming, a shadow of the man standing over her. Trent froze. The cold air from the open doorway bit at his neck, but the chill from Evelyn's gaze was sharper. "I can't," Trent whispered, his voice trembling. "You can and you will," Rick hissed, stepping over Evelyn to shove Trent aside. You want to throw away a career for a ghost? Think about your mortgage, kid. Think about the guys in this house who look out for you. You pull this thread, and the whole town unspools. Now get her in the car. Rick grabbed her again, but Trent didn't help. He stood paralyzed as Rick shoved her into the back seat of the patrol car like a piece of refuse. Evelyn's head hit the doorframe, but she didn't make a sound. She kept her eyes locked on the rookie until the door slammed shut, severing the connection. Rick wiped his brow, breathing hard. Go, drive. Don't look back. Trent got behind the wheel, his hands shaking so violently he could barely turn the key. As he pulled away from the station, the image of Evelyn's eyes remained burned into his retinas, a silent gavel falling in the darkness of his conscience. The interior of the patrol car smelled of cold vinyl and the copper tang of fear. Trent's eyes were fixed on the rearview mirror, watching the silhouette of the woman he was supposed to discard. He expected to see her slumped, dying, or unconscious. Instead, he saw her sitting upright, her spine as rigid as a steel rod. The tremors were gone, the waxy pallor remained, but the eyes that met his in the mirror were no longer those of a victim. "Pull over, officer," she said. The voice didn't belong to a grandmother. It was a resonant, melodic baritone that commanded the space like a physical force. It was the voice of a woman who had spent decades dictating the record of history. Trent's foot hit the brake instinctively, the car skidding to a halt on the dark, pine-lined shoulder of the road. "Ma'am, I have orders," Trent stammered, his hand hovering over his radio. "You have an oath," Evelyn corrected him, her voice cutting through his panic. She leaned forward, the shadows of the trees dancing across her sharp features. "And right now you have a choice. You can be the man who let a federal judge die at a bus stop, or you can be the man who saved himself from a RICO indictment." Trent turned in his seat, his mouth agape. "A judge? Judge Evelyn Vance, United States Court of Appeals," she said, each word landing like a hammer blow. She reached into the hidden lining of her cardigan and pulled out a small, encrypted thumb drive, a backup she had kept tucked away when Rick snatched her purse. Rick Miller didn't just steal $20,000 tonight. He committed a dozen federal civil rights violations on a recorded line he forgot existed. She leaned closer, her breath still shallow, but her intent absolute. "Listen to me very carefully, Trent. Rick thinks he turned off the feed in interrogation room 4. He didn't. He only toggled the monitor. The server in the basement is still buffering. The override code for the precinct mainframe is 77 Alpha Sierra 9. If you go back, if you reactivate the remote link and call the number I am about to give you, I can promise you immunity. If you don't, you are a co-conspirator in the kidnapping of a federal official." Trent felt the world tilting. The safety of his career, the pressure of his peers, it all felt small and fragile compared to the gravity of the woman in the back seat. She wasn't pleading for her life. She was offering him a way out of the darkness he had just stepped into. "Why me?" Trent whispered. "Because you brought me the water," Evelyn replied, her gaze softening for a fraction of a second. "Now give me your phone. You're going to dial the office of the state attorney general. Tell them the iron gavel is holding court in Shadow Creek, and she requires an immediate escort." Trent took a deep breath, the cold air finally clearing the fog in his mind. He didn't look back at the station. He looked at the woman who had just turned his patrol car into a mobile chambers. He handed her his phone. The morning sun in Shadow Creek was pale and deceptive, casting long, thin shadows across the precinct parking lot. Sergeant Rick Miller arrived early, his stride buoyed by a sense of invincible prosperity. He had spent the night imagining the upgrades he could afford for his lakeside cabin, the $20,000 sitting in his personal locker like a secret golden seed. He whistled as he entered the lobby, nodding to the desk sergeant who looked uncharacteristically tense. By 10 o'clock, the atmosphere shifted. 3 black SUVs, their windows tinted to a charcoal opacity, rolled silently into the gravel lot. There were no sirens, no flashing blue lights, and no frantic shouts. The vehicles moved with a synchronized funereal grace, coming to a halt directly in front of the precinct's main entrance. Rick watched from the window of his office, his chest swelling with self-importance. He straightened his tie and adjusted his badge. In a town this small, high-profile visitors usually meant federal grants or political endorsements. He assumed his efficiency in asset seizure had finally caught the eyes of the higher-ups. "Trent!" Rick called out, seeing the rookie standing near the coffee station. Trent looked like a man who hadn't slept in a century. His eyes were bloodshot, and his hands were shoved deep into his pockets. "Straighten up, kid. We have company. Probably the regional brass coming to see how a real station is run." The heavy glass doors of the precinct swung open. 3 men and 2 women stepped inside, all dressed in charcoal gray suits that screamed of high-level litigation and federal authority. They didn't look like soldiers. They looked like surgeons coming to excise a tumor. Leading them was a tall, sharp-featured man with salt and pepper hair and a face that had appeared on every news channel in the state for the last 6 years. Rick stepped out of his office, his hand extended, a practiced, oily smile plastered across his face. "State Attorney General Ward, what an unexpected honor, sir. We weren't told Shadow Creek was on your itinerary today. If you're here about the narcotics initiative, I've got the files ready for review." The Attorney General didn't take Rick's hand. He didn't even acknowledge the gesture. He stopped 3 feet away, his presence turning the room into an icebox. The silence that followed was heavy, punctuated only by the hum of the overhead lights and the frantic heartbeat Rick tried to hide behind his ribs. "I'm not here for a briefing, Sergeant Miller," Ward said, his voice cold and precise. "And I'm certainly not here for your files." Rick's smile faltered, the corners of his mouth twitching. "I don't understand, sir. Is there a problem with our reporting? We've been hitting record numbers for the county." "You've been hitting record numbers for your own pocket," the Attorney General replied. He stepped aside, gesturing toward the hallway leading to the medical wing, the wing where Trent had defied orders and hidden a dying woman. Rick's heart did a slow, sickening roll in his chest. His eyes darted to the back of the room, expecting to see a ghost. Instead, he saw the door open. The woman he had discarded like trash walked out, her back straight, her chin held high, and the waxy pallor replaced by a cold, judicial fire. She wasn't wearing a floral cardigan anymore. She was draped in the absolute authority of a life lived for the truth. The blood drained from Rick's face, leaving him a sickly shade of ivory that matched the station walls. He stared at Evelyn, his mouth working silently like a fish out of water. She didn't look like a grandmother anymore. She looked like a monument. You were supposed to be," Rick stammered, his hand instinctively reaching for the holster at his hip. "Dead?" Evelyn finished for him, her voice echoing through the silent precinct. "At a bus stop? I'm afraid my heart is more resilient than your morals, Sergeant." Attorney General Ward stepped forward, placing a heavy, leather-bound dossier on Rick's desk. The sound of the impact was like a gunshot. "You made a very specific mistake last night, Rick. You didn't just pick up an outsider. You kidnapped a retired senior judge of the Federal Court of Appeals." "And more importantly to me," Ward said, his eyes darkening with a lethal, quiet rage, "you left my mother to die on a cold floor because you wanted $20,000 for a boat." The room spun. Rick felt the floor tilt beneath his boots. The officers in the lobby, the ones who had laughed with him over coffee an hour ago, were now backing away, their hands clear of their weapons, their faces masks of pure terror. They knew a sinking ship when they saw one. "I didn't know," Rick whispered, his voice cracking. "It was just procedure. The money was suspicious. I have the waiver. She signed the waiver." "The waiver you forced her to thumbprint while she was in the throes of a cardiac event?" Evelyn said, stepping into his personal space. She wasn't shouting, but her words felt like iron bars. The one you obtained after turning off the monitor, but forgetting the cloud-based server override? My son's office has been watching the footage for the last 4 hours. We've watched you steal. We've watched you extort. We've watched you commit attempted, depraved heart murder. Ward opened the dossier to the first page. At the top, in bold, terrifying letters, were the words, RICO Indictment. We aren't just here for the money you took last night, Ward said. We've been tracking the Shadow Creek Asset Forfeiture Fund for 18 months. We just needed a witness with enough standing to dismantle your entire operation. You gave us the best witness in the country. He looked at his mother, then back at Rick. Under the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, your entire precinct is being seized. Every locker, every cruiser, every bank account. You love the law of forfeiture so much, Rick. I thought it was only fair that you finally get to experience it from the other side. Rick reached for the edge of the desk to steady himself, but his knees buckled. The very system he had sharpened into a blade had just swung back to sever his life at the root. He looked at the handcuffs hanging from his own belt, the cold metal reflecting the light of the morning he thought would make him rich. Evelyn leaned in, her spectacles catching the light. The law is a living thing, Sergeant. You told me that. And today, it's hungry. The silence in the precinct was heavy, a suffocating vacuum that swallowed the hum of the air conditioner and the distant chirp of a radio. Attorney General Ward didn't signal for his own agents to step forward. Instead, he looked directly at Rookie Trent, who was standing by the water cooler, his face set in a grim, stony mask. Officer Trent, Ward said, his voice echoing off the cinder block. Do your job. Trent stepped forward. The sound of his boots on the linoleum was the only thing moving in the room. He reached for the handcuffs on his belt, the same cuffs Rick had ordered him to use on a dying woman just hours before. Rick's eyes were wide, frantic, darting from face to face, searching for a single glimmer of solidarity, a shred of the blue wall he had hidden behind for 15 years. He found nothing. The veteran officers who had shared his kickbacks stood like statues. Some looked at the floor, others stared intensely at the ceiling. They weren't just letting him fall, they were erasing him. To acknowledge him was to share his fate. And in the cold light of a federal indictment, loyalty had evaporated like mist. Rick Miller, you are under arrest for civil rights violations, extortion, and racketeering, Trent said, his voice gaining a strength that hadn't been there the night before. He spun Rick around. The sergeant didn't resist. The predatory swagger was gone, replaced by a pathetic, trembling frailty. As the steel ratcheted shut over Rick's wrists, click, 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 the sound seemed to resonate through the entire building. It was the sound of a kingdom collapsing. You can't do this, Rick whimpered, his voice small and thin. I was one of you. I kept this town running. We were a team. Not a single officer spoke. The silence was a collective verdict, a brutal shunning that stripped Rick of his identity far more effectively than the removal of his badge. He was no longer a sergeant, a brother, or a leader. He was a liability. He was a ghost. Evelyn stood at the center of the room, her arms folded. She watched the process with a clinical, detached sorrow. She saw the way Rick's shoulders slumped, the way his head hung low, and the way his eyes searched for a mercy he had never shown others. Look at them, Rick, she said softly, her voice carrying to every corner of the station. This is the silence you built. You taught them that the law is a weapon for the powerful and a trap for the weak. You taught them that people are objects to be seized. Don't be surprised that they're treating you exactly the way you trained them to. As Trent led him toward the exit, the path cleared before them like a receding tide. No one patted him on the back. No one whispered a word of encouragement. Rick Miller was walked out of his own precinct in total, deafening isolation. The transport van waited at the curb, its rear doors yawning open like a hungry mouth. Before Rick was loaded into the dark interior, Evelyn signaled for the agents to pause. She walked toward him, her steps slow and purposeful. Rick looked up, his face a frantic map of sweat and desperation. He looked for a sneer, a moment of gloating triumph he could use to fuel his resentment, but he found only a vast, terrifying neutrality. "Why didn't you just tell me who you were?" Rick hissed, his voice trembling with a mixture of rage and self-pity. "You could have walked away in 5 minutes. You baited me. You sat there and let me ruin my life." Evelyn stopped inches from him. She didn't look down at his handcuffs. She looked into his eyes, searching for a soul that had long since been traded for paper currency. "I didn't ruin your life, Rick. I simply allowed you to be yourself in the presence of a witness," she said, her voice as steady as a heartbeat. "You think my title would have changed the morality of your actions? If I had been a simple school teacher or a widow with her life savings, would that have made your theft any less of a sin?" Rick looked away, his jaw tightening. "That's not how the world works. Everyone takes a piece. I just got caught." "That is the lie you told yourself so you could sleep," Evelyn replied. "You saw an older woman of color in an expensive car, and you saw an opportunity to exploit a system that you believed was designed to protect people like you from people like me. You didn't care about the law, you cared about the leverage." She reached out, not to touch him, but to point to the tarnished silver badge still pinned to his chest, a piece of metal that would soon be evidence in a box. "You told me in that room that power is the only thing that matters. You were wrong. Power without integrity is just a debt you eventually have to pay back with interest. You didn't lose because I am a judge. You lost because you forgot that the badge you wear belongs to the people, not your retirement fund." Rick opened his mouth to retort, but the words died in his throat. There was no argument left that could stand against the weight of her presence. He wasn't being defeated by a person, he was being erased by a principle. "I don't hate you, Rick," she said, and the pity in her voice was the sharpest blade of all. "I am simply the consequence of your choices. You spent years building a cage for the innocent, never realizing you were the one sitting inside it all along." She turned her back on him then, dismissing him before he was even gone. As the agents hoisted him into the van, Rick looked back one last time, but Evelyn was already walking away, her figure framed by the morning light, leaving him in the darkness he had spent a career perfecting. The sun had climbed higher, stripping away the deceptive morning mist to reveal Shadow Creek for what it truly was. A small town standing at a crossroads. The black SUVs had departed, taking the disgraced sergeant and the evidence of his decade-long empire with them. Evelyn stood by her Lincoln town car, the hood warm under the late morning heat. She watched the precinct doors. The silence hanging over the building was no longer predatory. It was contemplative. Trent emerged from the lobby, his gait hesitant, the weight of his uniform appearing heavier than it had the night before. He stopped a few feet from her, reaching into his pocket. He held out her keys, the metal glinting in the light. Along with them, he handed back her leather handbag and the manila envelope, the seal still broken, but the contents accounted for. "I checked the evidence log myself, Judge," Trent said, his voice low. "Every cent is there. And I found your medication. I should have done it sooner." Evelyn took the keys, her fingers brushing his palm. "We all have moments where the world asks us who we are, officer. Most people wait for someone else to give them the answer. You chose to find it yourself." Trent looked at the station, then back at her. "What happens to this place now?" "The law will do what it was designed to do," she replied, sliding into the driver's seat. The leather interior smelled of cedar and old books, a familiar, grounding comfort. "It will sift through the ash, separate the wheat from the chaff, and begin again. It's a slow process, but it's the only one we have." She started the engine. The Lincoln purred to life, a steady, rhythmic heartbeat that had survived decades of wear. Rick had called it a criminal invitation. Now, it was simply a vessel for a woman going home. "Judge?" Trent called out as she shifted into gear. "Will you be coming back for the trial?" Evelyn adjusted her gold-rimmed spectacles and looked at him through the open window. The shadow of the iron gavel had retreated, leaving only the quiet dignity of a woman who had seen the arc of the moral universe bend firsthand. "I suspect, officer, that my testimony is already written in the files you saved. I've spent my life in courtrooms. I think I'd like to spend my retirement in the garden." She pulled away from the curb, the gravel crunching under her tires. As she drove toward the town limits, she passed the spot on the shoulder where Rick had first pulled her over. There were no flashing lights now, no looming shadows, and no threats of forfeiture. The Lincoln rolled past the "Welcome to Shadow Creek" sign. Evelyn didn't look in the rearview mirror to see the town fade away. She kept her eyes on the road ahead, her hands steady at 10 and 2, driving toward the city with the $20,000 that would rebuild a church and a conscience that remained, as always, unbought. The road opened up, wide and clear, beneath a sky that finally felt empty of secrets.